Welcome back to History for Sleep, a place where the past unfolds quietly, where curiosity doesn't rush, and where the world before us is allowed to breathe. As you settle in, let your shoulders relax. Let your breathing find its own rhythm. There's nothing you need to remember tonight, only stories. Tonight we're exploring something both ancient and unsettling. Technologies once mastered, then lost. Arts so advanced that even with modern science, we still struggle to fully recreate them. This is the story of the ancient technologies we still can't replicate. History often moves forward, but not always. Sometimes knowledge disappears. Not in fire, not in catastrophe, but quietly, through neglect, through collapse, through forgetting. Entire techniques once common become myths, and centuries later we stand over their remains, confused. Across the ancient world, civilizations achieved things that seem to defy their tools. Stone cut with precision that rivals modern machining. Materials engineered without chemistry. Structures aligned with the heavens without computers. These weren't accidents. They were systems, learned, practiced, passed down, until they weren't. One of the most famous examples is ancient stonework. In places like Egypt, Peru, and India, massive stone blocks were shaped and fitted together so precisely that even a blade cannot slip between them. No mortar, no gaps, no visible error. Modern engineers can reproduce this, but only with heavy machinery, lasers, and industrial saws. The ancient builders had none of these. So how did they do it? Some suggest lost tools. Copper saws combined with abrasive sand. Stone hammers wielded with extraordinary skill. Time and labor measured not in years, but generations. Others argue that something else is missing. Knowledge, not mystical, practical. Techniques refined through repetition, then lost when societies changed. Concrete is another mystery. The Romans built structures that still stand after 2,000 years. Their concrete hardens underwater. It resists cracking. It grows stronger over time. Modern concrete does not. Scientists have analyzed Roman samples and found volcanic ash, seawater chemistry, and mineral reactions we still don't fully control. We understand the ingredients, but not the full process. The recipe survived. The method did not. Then there is ancient metallurgy. Steel made before industrial furnaces. Blades with internal patterns that modern forging struggles to match. Damascus steel is one of the most famous. Flexible, sharp, resilient. Its secret was lost for centuries. Even today, recreations are approximations. The original method vanished when trade routes collapsed and specialized craftsmen disappeared. Across ancient India, texts describe materials with properties far ahead of their time. Rust-resistant iron pillars, heat-resistant alloys, precision casting. The iron pillar of Delhi has stood exposed to the elements for over 1,600 years, barely corroded. Modern metallurgy still studies it, still debates it. There are ancient lenses found in Mesopotamia. Optical devices predating formal optics. Was this coincidence? Or evidence of forgotten scientific understanding? Historians disagree, but the artifacts remain silent. Some ancient technologies were not mechanical at all. They were biological, selective breeding, agricultural engineering, medical practices based on observation rather than theory. Ancient surgeons performed complex operations without anesthesia as we know it, using plant compounds, pressure points, and ritual. Some techniques worked, some didn't, but many were lost when written knowledge vanished. Why were these arts forgotten? Sometimes because empires fell. Sometimes because specialists died without apprentices. Sometimes because knowledge was guarded too closely. When secrecy meets collapse, loss becomes permanent. This is where theories begin. Some believe ancient knowledge was intentionally suppressed, that elites controlled techniques to maintain power. Others believe ancient civilizations were more globally connected than we admit, sharing technology that later fragmented. And some suggest something more controversial, that we underestimate the intelligence and ingenuity of the ancient mind. Modern science often assumes progress is linear, but history shows cycles: advancement, stability, loss, then rediscovery. As you listen now, notice how comforting this idea can be, that humans before us were not primitive. They were observant, patient, capable of mastering the world around them, not through speed but through time. One of the most unsettling truths about lost technologies is how ordinary they once were. They weren't miracles. They weren't secrets whispered only to kings. They were skills, practiced daily, refined slowly, trusted completely. And that is exactly why they were vulnerable. When a skill becomes common, it is rarely written down. It lives in hands, in muscle memory, in repetition. And when those hands disappear, the knowledge goes with them. Ancient construction offers many examples. In Peru, the builders of sites like Sacsayhuaman shaped enormous stones with dozens of interlocking faces. No two stones are identical. Each was shaped to fit its neighbors perfectly. This required not only precision, but planning. The builders had to understand how each stone would sit before it was placed. Modern stonemasons can replicate individual joints, but recreating an entire wall using the same method is slow, expensive, and uncertain. The ancient builders did it at scale, with consistency, with confidence. Some engineers believe the secret was not tools, but process. Stones were shaped incrementally, placed, removed, adjusted, again and again. Time was not the constraint it is today. Generations worked on a single structure. Skill accumulated across lifetimes. We build fast. They build permanently. There are also ancient machines that exist only in description. Greek texts describe devices powered by steam, water, and counterweights. Automata that moved on their own. Doors that opened when fires were lit. Statues that poured liquid when rituals began. These were not fantasies. Some were reconstructed successfully in modern times, but many remain theoretical, because the texts describe outcomes, not instructions. The how was assumed knowledge, lost to us. One of the most debated examples is the Antikythera mechanism, a complex system of gears found in a shipwreck. It predicted eclipses, planetary motion, and astronomical cycles. It was built over 2,000 years ago. For decades, scientists could not understand how it worked. Only with modern imaging did its complexity become clear. It was not an anomaly. It was evidence. Evidence that advanced mechanical thinking existed, and then vanished. Why didn't this knowledge continue? Because continuity matters more than brilliance. A single generation gap can erase centuries of refinement. Wars disrupt apprenticeships. Economic collapse halts specialization. Cultural shifts change priorities. When the system that supports a technology fails, the technology fails with it. There are lost arts in medicine as well. Ancient physicians practiced techniques that modern science is only beginning to revisit. Fasting protocols, herbal synergies, mind-body interactions. Some worked, some were harmful, but many were based on careful observation rather than theory. When medical traditions were replaced wholesale, nuance disappeared. Only fragments remain. Then there are the most controversial claims, that some ancient technologies were too advanced to be explained by known methods. Perfect stone drilling. Massive blocks moved without obvious means. Precision alignment across continents. Mainstream historians point to labor, ingenuity, and time. Others argue that explanations are incomplete. They suggest lost tools, lost energy sources, lost methods of measurement. There is no conclusive proof, but the questions persist. What is clear is this: ancient people were not lacking intelligence. They lacked our machines, but they had something else: time, patience, continuity. Modern society values innovation. Ancient societies valued preservation. That difference alone can explain much. We constantly replace. They refined. As you rest now, notice how these stories don't demand belief. They don't insist on mystery. They simply reveal how fragile knowledge can be. Not because humans forget easily, but because systems do. Among all lost technologies, the ones that stir the most debate are those connected to energy. How did ancient civilizations move massive stone blocks without engines? How did they lift, transport, and align objects weighing tens, sometimes hundreds, of tons? Mainstream explanations focus on leverage, ramps, rollers, water flotation, and coordinated labor. And in many cases, these explanations work, but not always comfortably. Some sites defy easy reconstruction, not because the ancients lacked ability, but because the methods leave no trace. Consider ancient Egypt. The pyramids were not built in isolation. They were part of a vast technological ecosystem. Quarries, canals, tool workshops, logistics centers. Recent discoveries suggest water channels were used to float massive stones closer to construction sites. Gravity did the work. Humans guided it. This explanation is elegant, but it raises another question. If these methods were so effective, why were they abandoned? Because infrastructure is fragile. When centralized authority collapses, systems decay. Canals silt up. Tools are repurposed. Knowledge becomes irrelevant. A method that requires coordination across thousands of people cannot survive fragmentation. The technology didn't fail. The society did. There are more speculative claims as well. Some ancient texts describe sound, vibration, or resonance being used in construction. Chants, horns, rhythmic tools. Modern experiments show that sound can influence matter in subtle ways, but there is no evidence of sound-based lifting at ancient scales. Still, the persistence of these stories suggests something meaningful. Perhaps not levitation, but coordination. Sound synchronizes groups. It aligns movement. It turns many individuals into one system. Technology does not always mean machines. Sometimes it means organization. Another controversial area is ancient electricity. Artifacts like the so-called Baghdad battery have fueled debate for decades. Clay jars, metal rods, acidic residues. Some researchers argue they were simple batteries. Others say they were ritual objects. There is no consensus. But even if they produced electricity, their purpose remains unknown. The problem with lost technology is not just whether it existed. It's what it was for. Then there are materials that seem almost alive. Self-healing concrete, rust-resistant iron, glass that bends without breaking. These materials were not accidents. They were recipes, and recipes require continuity. If one ingredient changes, the result changes. If one step is skipped, the method fails. Modern science excels at isolating variables. Ancient technology often relied on complexity, multiple interacting factors, difficult to replicate in controlled settings. This leads to a frustrating truth. Rediscovery is often harder than invention. Because invention emerges from context, rediscovery happens without it. We find artifacts, but not the thinking behind them. We know what was built, but not how decisions were made. The logic is gone. Some believe knowledge was intentionally hidden, that ancient elites restricted access, that guilds guarded secrets. There is truth here. Craft traditions were often protected fiercely, not out of malice, but survival. If everyone knows your method, your value disappears. When those guilds vanished, their secrets vanished too. Others argue that ancient civilizations experienced technological peaks and collapses long before recorded history. That cycles of advancement occurred, then reset. There is little hard evidence, but archaeological gaps leave room for speculation. Absence does not prove absence. What matters most is not whether ancient technologies were magical. They were human, developed through observation, refined through patience, lost through disruption. As your breathing deepens now, notice how gently these ideas settle. There is no urgency in them, no demand for belief, only an invitation to respect the past. When all the fragments are laid out together, a quieter picture begins to form. Lost ancient technologies were not miracles. They were not beyond human understanding. They were the result of continuity. Knowledge passed carefully from one generation to the next, refined slowly, protected by practice rather than documentation. When that continuity broke, the knowledge didn't explode or vanish dramatically. It simply stopped. And without repetition, even the most reliable techniques fade. This is one of the hardest lessons history offers. Progress is not guaranteed. It depends on systems that support memory, education, apprenticeship, stability, time. When those systems fail, even advanced knowledge can disappear within a single lifetime. Modern society often assumes that information, once discovered, is permanent, stored in books, saved digitally, backed up endlessly. But ancient technologies remind us that knowledge is more than data. It is practice. It lives in the hands, the eyes, the judgment of people who do something every day. Without that lived experience, instructions alone are incomplete. This explains why modern scientists can analyze ancient materials, understand their components, and still fail to recreate them exactly. The missing piece is often not chemistry or physics. It is process, the order of steps, the timing, the intuition built over decades. Things that are never written down because they feel obvious to those who know them. Lost technologies also challenge the way we measure intelligence. Ancient societies lacked modern tools, but they were masters of their environment. They observed patterns we overlook. They worked with materials directly. They accepted slow progress as normal. Their achievements were not rushed. They were grown. There is something humbling in this. We tend to believe the future will always be more advanced than the past. But history shows that advancement can reverse. Not because people become less capable, but because circumstances change. Trade routes collapse. Climate shifts. Cultures reorganize. Priorities realign. What mattered once no longer does. And when it no longer matters, it is forgotten. Some lost ancient technologies may one day be rediscovered. Others may never be, not because they were impossible, but because the world that required them no longer exists. And that may be the most important insight of all. Technology is not universal. It is contextual. As you rest now, notice how calm this realization can feel. The past does not accuse us. It simply reminds us that knowledge is fragile. That skill must be practiced. That patience creates permanence. The ancient world was not waiting to be surpassed. It was doing its best with the tools, time, and understanding it had. And in many ways, it succeeded beautifully. There is nothing left to uncover tonight. No mystery that needs solving. Only a quiet respect for what came before, and an awareness of what we carry forward. Let your thoughts soften. Let the past settle. And allow sleep to arrive naturally. History does not need to be remembered perfectly, only gently. Good night, Crescent Moon.